Thank you so much for joining us. Last night at the dinner, we already had the pleasure of discussing a lot of things, and I learned that you joined the VC and private equity ecosystem in the 90s. So you've seen a lot of things. You've seen some turbulences on the market. So I'm wondering, for someone that is that experienced and that has such a huge overview of what's happening and that many insights, how can you stay calm in times of uncertainty when you feel like every time you're checking your crypto portfolio or your stocks, everything is like going down, everything is red, and everyone is freaking out? How can we all stay calm? How do you do this, Prince Max?
I think the benefit from being a little bit older is that you realize that the world goes on, and the thing that is important, I think, in times like that, is to really just focus on the things that we can influence, rather than getting crazy by looking at screens that look red and change all the time. That I think are more of a distraction for entrepreneurs who typically have plenty of things to do, and so I think the best advice I can give is to really continue to focus on what you can influence, and then get some satisfaction and some calm from hopefully progress on the things that you can influence and progress.
Would you say that you're an optimistic person?
Sure.
That's good, because I feel that especially in times like this, you just need to be optimistic, right? Because you said it, we need to stay calm, we need to focus on the things that we can actually influence, and as entrepreneurs, all of you can definitely influence a lot of things, so I think we should not underestimate the power that we have as human beings, obviously. So now, seeing this kind of conversation or this topic from an investor's perspective. So we know that a lot of startups in the room, some of them will be pitching later, are obviously currently fundraising. Some of them are raising their very first funding rounds, and they are wondering, what does this mean for my fundraising? How will investors actually act? So what is your advice to the startups from the first, on the first side? What would you advise them to do when they talk to investors, how to keep them calm and how to actually convince them to invest into the startups these days?
Again, I would advise them to present their organization in the best possible way, to sort of acknowledge, of course, the challenges. I think also investors want to back people who have a realistic outlook on things, but it's not sort of the first topic as an entrepreneur that I would, of course, raise with the investors. I think it's a bit up to the investors to then also assess and judge what this crisis, what this sort of change in the environment and the downturn in the capital market really means for them.
So as I know that we also have some investors in the room, and I'm not going to ask them to raise their hand because then all the startups will be just going to you and everyone will be like super busy. But what I would like to know, well, hopefully you're going to give them some optimistic advice. This I can already say in the beginning, but what would you advise investors to do? Because also a lot of investors will now be like, and this is also then something that we see with our startups, they're like, okay, let's see what's going to happen. Let's see what the situation is going to be regarding interest rates, regarding inflation, etc. And everyone is like coming into this position where they just wait. And obviously waiting and not making decisions is the worst thing, obviously, for a startup ecosystem. So what would be your recommendation, or what would you tell investors to do right now if they're feeling like, okay, there's actually interesting startups out there, I believe in European tech, what should I do, Prince Max?
Look, I think for investors, and being an investor myself, this correction in the capital markets has some positive aspects. We have been complaining over the last 1.5 to 2 years how prices have become unrealistic, how it has become very difficult to invest organizations at price levels that allowed you to achieve the returns that we are shooting for. So from that perspective, for us investors, a bit of a correction in the market, feels healthy, feels good. On the other hand, we of course are also invested in startups and in organizations, and there we sort of need to reassess where the sort of risks and opportunities that have changed a bit in the current environment lie. And if an organization is progressing well and continues to have strong prospects, there is really no reason why we wouldn't continue to back them. Of course, there might be some investors who are struggling in the current environment because they themselves do no longer have the funds available quite in the same to the same extent as before. They might be stuck in fundraising themselves. So for some of them, it might be a challenge. But the beauty of this ecosystem that has developed is that there are a lot of pockets out there that have pools of capital that are relatively unaffected by the current crisis because it is sort of there in the form of capital commitments from relatively large and steady pools of capital, such as pension funds and so on. So I think for investors who have invested well over the last couple of years, this correction is probably more welcome than bad news. The thing which makes us all a little bit nervous is, how deep is this sort of correction going to be? How will the economy sort of react over the next sort of 12 to 24 months? I think that's not that easy to forecast. I'm not going to try to forecast it, but what is very clear is that what has helped us out over the last couple of sort of market corrections, a very aggressive federal sort of monetary policy. That's not going to happen this time around, as those opportunities are no longer there for the central banks.
Gotcha. So a healthy correction, if I may take this one away. We're trying to stay calm and still continue to invest. And I know that we have hardly any time left, but there's one final question, and I think you addressed this topic very perfectly in yesterday's speech. Obviously, you are a true believer in diversity. This is also one of the reasons why you're here today and why LGT is supporting this event. What is your personal perspective on diversity, and why does it matter so much for everyone out there, and especially for the ones that might not be convinced yet that diversity is a success factor?
I think diversity makes the world a much more colorful place, a more fun place, creates a much more creative and stimulating environment. I think as we look at organizations, I truly believe it makes them sort of stronger, more resilient, provides them with more opportunities, and ultimately it's also, of course, a bit of a question of fairness, as it is just unfair if sort of opportunities for development aren't sort of equal.
Prince Max, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for supporting all of this, for joining us today. I wish you a wonderful event. I hope that you're going to stay with us for a bit longer so that people can also talk to you and ask you some more questions, whether it's investors or founders. Thank you so much. This is your round of applause.
Thank you. And I would like to thank you and congratulate you to the great efforts that you're making through your organization. I think it is important and it's a lot of fun to see how you're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.